Hello and welcome to another episode of Grange TV. We have with us a very special guest, Mr. Darren Harvey. Thank you, Eli, for being here as always. Darren, or Harvey as people call you, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Where do I start? I'm 50 years old, living in Sydney, worked in television for about 30 years now. Started at the bottom, worked my way up to the top, and now got a couple of really good gigs, and life's good. Yeah. You were telling
off camera. We were talking a little bit about the stuff you do with. Is it? I get all the car stuff mixed up, but is it supercars, MotoGP? You worked overseas with some rally cars, and now you're telling us some pretty cool stuff. Can correct me if I'm wrong. Tell me.
I've worked in the past on MotoGP here in Australia. At the event down at Phillip Island. I've worked on for many years for Channel 10. Also did the same thing for Formula 1 for many years. And I spent a year working overseas on the World Rally Championship as the television director. It was a fun gig because I got to basically drive every stage of the World Rally Championship in a hire car.
And that's what, like 15 countries you were saying?
Yeah, 15 countries in a year. And my job was to drive as fast as I possibly could around the stages without crashing. And then when I got to a point that got really scary and I went, whoa, that was pretty crazy, then we'd stop and put a camera there.
So that was your job?
Yeah, pretty much.
How good of a driver are you?
I got better. No, I'm a pretty good driver. I've been doing that kind of stuff for a few years beforehand on the Australian Rally Championship. The craziest thing about driving overseas is, obviously you're on the wrong side of the road. For a little while when I was driving around Europe, I had an English car. So, you're a right-hand side of the car, driving on the right-hand side of the road. So that's a little bit hard to get your head around. And then driving around on snow roads and things like that, trying not to crash when you're on the wrong side of the road. It was pretty fun times.
So, but your job was to actually thrash the car and see how fast you could go and how scary it could get before you crashed it?
Essentially, what we're trying to do is just, look at it from a driver's perspective and go, could this be a case where there's going to be some great action here? Would they go sideways? Are they going to get a little bit of air? Will they do something that's going to look great on the camera? So then once we figured out, we can get a great camera angle up there, and then we'd try to work out the logistics of how do we get the car there, what time does the car have to arrive. Then you basically have so many crew, you've got to leapfrog the crew from one stage to the next to make sure you're getting shots, all day long of all the different cars. And then we would get helicopters to bring back vision for us, or motorbike couriers. So we'd have to chart out the whole day and figure out exactly where our cameramen are going to be, what crossroads are near, when the rally stage is going to finish, at what time they could get out of there, meet the courier, how long the courier is going to take to get back to us, and then how long it's going to take to put into the computer, and then how long it's going to take to edit after that. So it's all one big sort of, machine that you've got to figure out so we can get the program done and made that day, because we had to put out a half-an-hour highlight show every single day. And our deadlines don't move. We've got deadlines that, if we say we're going to make a television program by this time and it's going to be on that day, then people around the world are expecting it to come via the satellite to their television channel. So we really have to be on our game and make sure that everything happens when it's going to happen, and make sure that, everything's like perfectly laid out.
Are you the person putting all of that together, the logistics?
Yeah.
How stressful is that?
It's pretty good. I mean, throughout the years of working in television, you get used to managing stressful situations. I mean, my first job was working as a news editor for Channel 9 when I was a whippersnapper. I think I was like 21 when I started doing that. And you get used to managing time, because every single day you have 3 or 4 packages that you have to get ready for the news that night. And then as the day goes on, your time pressure increases and increases and increases. So every single day, you're coming down to the wire, and things are on tape back in those days. So pretty much your last thing that you were making, which is inevitably a sports story, you'd be making it, finishing it, pulling the tape out, running it upstairs, putting it in the machine. As the person was reading the introduction to that story, you'd be putting it in, queuing it up, and nearly as he's finishing his sentence, you'd hit play and it would go to air. So you really got to know how time works and how long things take, and then that just flows on into the rest of your television career.
How you say that was your first job? How did you get started? You said you started from the bottom. How did you get started? So that was at 21, 22. You went to school. You were saying in Adelaide.
Yep.
Your first job was in Sydney.
No, well, I left school at 16.
Yep.
I was not very good at school, so I left pretty much. And I sort of left mid-year, and then within 2 weeks of leaving, I had a job working in a factory, and then life has lots of sliding door moments. So I thought I was going to be an AFL footballer. I was really good, growing up, and I was captain of a couple of my footy teams and won a few medals and was in a couple of rep sides and all that kind of stuff. And then I had a big car accident. And I broke my arm and, put myself in hospital for a couple of weeks. And then after that, I had to essentially quit my job because I couldn't lift things anymore. And then I just happened to bump into an old mate who was a DJ at the time in a nightclub. And he said, "Do you want to come and give me a hand?" So I came along and pressed a few buttons and did a few lights for him and things like that. And then what ended up happening from that was a few years later, after I'd been doing that with him, one of my old friends from school turned up and said, "You know about mics and lights and all these kind of things. Do you want to work in television?" "I'm working in television. It's a fun gig." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, that'd be fun." So I called him up.
How old were you at this stage?
I was 19. So I went around and saw him and saw all the camera work, and I was like, "Oh, that looks pretty cool. I think that could be a bit of fun." So I was like, "All right, well, maybe I could do that." So I wrote a letter in. And then back in the days when there was no email, I wrote a letter in, got a letter back a few weeks later saying, "We're trying people out for on-the-job training. Do you want to come in and have a look?" So I went round to his place like the day before and I said, "Look, I don't know anything about the cameras. Take me through the whole camera. Like, I want to know everything about the camera." So we ran through everything, how it all works and all that kind of stuff. And then I went there like the day after and they said to me, "So, have you seen any of this stuff before?" And I was like, "Nah, never seen any of it before in my life." So as the day progressed, they're like, "You're a really fast learner. You know all about this stuff. You're a genius." So I totally conned them. And out of that, they gave me some part-time work. So I was part-time DJing. And then, so I'd finish about 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd start about 9 o'clock in the morning working for Channel 9 News in Adelaide. And then I'd work all day long until about 6 o'clock. And then I'd finish at 6 o'clock. And then I'd start DJing at 8 o'clock at night and work until 3 o'clock the next morning. So I did that like all weekend, because you always get the weekend shifts because no one wants to work on the weekend. So I basically did the hard yards, and then eventually a job came up as an editor. So I basically just said to them, "I would like that job." And they said, "Well, we're going to advertise for it in about a month, see how you go." So I just stayed back every single night, went in there after hours, taught myself how to edit for like a month, no pay, no nothing. And then at the end of that month, I just showed them my show reel of what I'd been editing, and they gave me the job straight away.
Cool.
And there's hope for us, eh? For us all.
And then from there you went on to do.
I went.
This is where, but where was
Channel 9 in Adelaide?
Okay.
Yeah. So I did that for I think like 4 years.
What year are we talking about?
Oh wow.
1980 or something?
Yeah, something like that. I worked from like 20 to about 25, 26 editing. And then I was like, okay, well, I need to do something else. So there was a job going as a on-air presentation coordinator. So they're the guys that basically put everything to air. So you go through a big log of everything, all the commercials, what's going to happen. And in Adelaide, it's very different because Adelaide, you're half an hour behind the rest of the eastern seaboard. So everything that got played in Sydney, like movies and things like that, essentially came down to satellite to us, and we'd record it on massive big tape machines with tape reels about this big 2-inch machines that would just go all day long. They record about 4 or 5 hours worth of stuff. So they'd be going all day. We'd have about 6 of them going, and you just rotate them. So you just take that one back half an hour, program it into the machine. So half an hour later, we're going to play that one. That'll be segment 1. Half an hour later, we'll play that one. That'll be segment 2. Half an hour later, we'll play that. It'll be segment 3. So that's all good if everything goes to plan. But I'd be doing night shift one night, and everything didn't go to plan. I'd finished at 7 o'clock in the morning, and the Today Show came on, and the machines all locked up, and everything started beeping. You know, I think I was on day 10 of my night shift, and everything started beeping, and I was just trying to operate everything. Okay, what do you do in an emergency? You got to push this button, do that there. Okay, got it done. Bang, roll it to air. And it was segment 2 of the Today Show, supposed to be the first one. And I didn't realise until about 2 minutes in, and I went, oh, it's too late now. And the magic of television is gone to that situation, because everybody...
So what happened?
Well, I just had to go through, and then segment 2 was like, hello and welcome to the Today Show. It's like, you know, you'd step back in time. You just you just had to run with it, you know. There's things like that you got to weigh up and go, if I now go back 2 minutes and try and adjust everything, the whole rest of the day is going to be out. All the commercial breaks will be out. All the times will be out. So what are you got to do? You just got to roll with it. So, yeah.
You know, talking about obviously putting a lot of effort to get to where you are.
Yeah.
And, you know, because, you know, people, and we say this with nearly every guest we have here, people see you now and they go, oh, obviously Darren's dad owns Channel 9, you know, and that's how he got the job. And, you know, you talk about all the stuff that you do and the extra hours you put in. And a second ago, we were talking about, was it Sebastian Lowe? Was it Sebastian Lowe?
Yep.
World Rally Car Champion, talking about how he knows the turns and whatnot. And can you just tell us a little bit about, not just necessarily him, but other people that other interesting cats that you've come across, but in particular him in this scenario?
I mean,
and their work ethic and their attention to detail.
Yeah, the good thing about, you know, being a producer is you get to talk to a lot of people. You know, get to interview everybody, do sit down interviews with a lot of people, so you get to learn, you know, about them. And, you know, quite often, like any situation, you can take a little bit from every single person. So Sebastian was an amazing person, because, you know, he's not just the fact that he won multiple world rally championships, but the fact that, you know, he was such a perfectionist and attention to detail, but also he had an incredible memory. So very gifted, because he had like a photographic memory. So they did like a little experiment with him where he drives, I don't know how many, you know, hundreds, thousands of, you know, rally roads all the time. So they played him a clip of 10 seconds of a rally road right in the middle of a rally stage. Didn't know where it was, you know, they just said, right, here's 10 seconds, tell us where that is. They played it to him and he went, that's 5 kilometres into the Spanish rally, that's stage 2. Just after that, there's a left and a right, and then something else after that. So I just instantly remembered that exact part of the road, exactly where it was, because he goes back, and at the end of the night, what they do on the rally is they drive the rally stage first, and they video everything before they go over it at speed. So they only go over it at speed for the first time, at speed that first time. So they videotape everything, and then they go back, and he will just watch the stage over and over and over and over again until he's memorised the whole stage.
Like, you know, like that, just sitting there and watching road like for hours on end requires, like, your brain has to be wired a certain way for you not to just doze off.
Yeah.
How do they not? Because again, I think something that people don't understand, like, if it's not like, if I drive from here to Canberra, say, and I do it all the time, like I'm talking to someone next to me and blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden you're sort of like halfway to Canberra before you know it, and I can't really remember if I ran over a kangaroo or not or whatever, you know. But how do they keep their concentration? Because how long are some of those
if you don't keep your concentration, you die.
You will be dead.
You know, those guys are doing, you know, 160 kilometres an hour around corners, you know, on the side of cliffs with trees, you know, all sorts of obstacles.
How many hours?
I mean, an average rally stage can be about 10 or 20, 30, 40 kilometres, you know, the longest about 50 kilometres. And they'll cover it in about 15 minutes, you know. So realistically, they do normally 3 stages in the morning, 3 or 4 stages in the morning, 3 or 4 stages in the afternoon. So they're doing, a couple of hours of, solid racing every single day.
That's crazy, though.
That's crazy.
Like intense concentration for a prolonged period of time.
Yeah, that's
it's
right.
It's broken up, but...
Yeah. It's like anything, you've got to build up to that. I'm sure they've, been doing go-kart racing and all those kind of things ever since they were, like a little kid. And the best, rally drivers are a lot of the times the guys that have grown up driving on snow roads, and they're used to the cars moving around underneath them. They're used to, going sideways, slipping sideways. So just driving on snow roads alone requires an intense amount of, concentration, because if you, have one slip up, you're in a bank, you're stuck in the middle of nowhere in a car that's probably going to freeze,
Sounds like fun.
Could I just ask a question? You were saying about how you used to go around the corners and figure out which ones... Were there ones where you went like, this corner's going to be tricky?
Yeah.
And then you've set a camera there and they've just...
Yeah.
You haven't got any good footage out of it?
Oh, no, most of the time, I mean, those cars go so fast, they're always sideways doing something, they're always spectacular to watch. Doesn't matter where they are. But, we knew pretty much where they were going to be super sideways, getting air, and most of the time either something close to a crash would happen or a crash would happen pretty much everywhere where we picked, because you kind of know after a while, this is tight, this is tricky. Always the corners that are hardest to drive are the ones that tighten on the end.
Yeah.
If anything's, you can flow around the corner really nicely if it's got the same sort of transition the whole way around. But if it tightens right at the finish, those guys will come around and then they'll just, crash a lot of the times, because it always catches them out.
So for television purposes, you were looking for crashes?
Well, you're not looking for crashes, but no, we are looking for crashes.
Is that like the rallies and that you're talking about? Is that the ones where the people are real close, they touch the car and that?
Yeah, I mean,
because some of those things are crazy. Yeah. You see the car flip and it's just like flipped over a person.
Yes.
Have you been the one that's caught that footage?
No, but nowadays, because everybody's got a camera phone. As soon as something big happens, people will end up coming down to where your television compound is and going, I've got this great footage, you've got to see it, and then give it to us. So it doesn't matter where you are on any stage, because there's always someone there filming it with a phone or something. You always pretty much get things like that. I mean, in Spain, a while ago, the things you were talking about, it used to be like a badge of honor if you could actually touch the car. Those guys would just always try and actually touch the car, and then they'd be bragging, right, so I actually touched the car. But, now, as the years go on, they're trying to basically, get the guys to stand back from the road and, but they're all drunk, they're in the middle of the countryside, they're having a party, they do crazy stuff. But it's stressful for the drivers as well. You can imagine the drivers are driving through these sea of people, they're trying to go fast, but at the same time, they're trying not to, hurt anybody either, which is, super hard on them, because, that's just people getting overexcited. That's that frenzy, mentality, that pack mentality that just takes over their brains.
What's more exciting to you, the MotoGP, Formula One, or rally? Out of the stuff you've done, out of those genres. Like,
I mean, I personally love MotoGP.
Can you explain what MotoGP is to maybe
MotoGP, like
viewers that don't know, or me?
Yeah, okay. It's basically the fastest, motorbikes on the planet, essentially. MotoGP can get up to a top speed of 340 kilometers an hour, going down the straight. If you've ever, the most unbelievable thing that I've ever seen in real life, from that kind of perspective, has been at Phillip Island, standing on the pit wall next to the track and see a bike come past you at 340 kilometers an hour, because it's like your eyes are playing tricks on you, because they're going that fast. It's like you're watching a cartoon or something. They just go, and you're like, what just happened? And then 10 more of them go like straight past you. It's incredible to watch. Those guys have got balls of steel, like, for sure.
Have you been there like live when guys come off?
No, I haven't seen it firsthand. Obviously, seen footage. You know, there's been some bad things that have happened overseas. You know, those guys really are taking their lives in their own hands. You know, when they go out there, for sure.
I saw footage probably in '97 or '98 once. I don't know if you know the one I'm talking about. Dude came off his motorbike. I don't know what speed he was going at, and he must have flown like for 50 meters. Like they had like slow motion of him like flying like that through the air, and when he landed, he slid. I don't know how much further, and he broke his wrist, and that was it. Got up and walked off. Do you know the one I'm talking about? It's like a crazy one.
I've seen multiple things like that when they get high-sided.
What's high-sided?
When you come around, it's the back wheel slips out, and then it grips, and flips.
Oh,
like that. So that's when you get the big crashes, when they get high-sided, because all of a sudden the rider just gets ejected and then just, you know, lands how he lands. But those guys, you know, you got to remember they've been motocrossing, all those kind of things since they were, you know, a whippersnapper. So they know how to cat scratch, fall, you know, get out of things a lot of the times. So, you know, sometimes they break a lot of collarbones, you know, because they come down heavy on their shoulders. But, you know, you're actually amazed how much they walk away from, you know. And nowadays they've got like the airbags, you know, actually inside the suit. So when they crash, as they crash, like a little airbag will just blow up inside to protect their back and their ribs and all those kind of things from really bad harm.
That's insane, but the MotoGP is crazy, crazy, crazy.
Yeah, that is top of the line crazy.
Is that the one that you're drawn to the most?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you know, I like the human element about it. You know, in race cars, they're amazing to watch, but they're a machine. You know, on a MotoGP bike, you can see the person. You can see them leaning into the corners. You know, you can see them when they're just like right next to each other, elbowing each other out the way. You can see them
in the motorbikes. They elbow each other out of the way.
Yeah. If they come around a corner and they're leaning on each other, you know, they'll elbow. Like guys, they're that amazing that, you know, if they lose the front wheel and the bike goes down, sometimes they can put their knee out and push themselves back up after the bike's sliding. You know, they're incredible, and that's the thing I love about, you know, any sport that I capture, is just the fact that the human element, you know, just seeing exactly what people can do.
And the Formula One guys, you do Formula One as well, eh?
Yeah, I've done Formula One, in the past.
They're insane too, eh?
Yeah, well,
how fast do their cars go?
The top speed is very comparable. I think, you know, with MotoGP and Formula One, this top speed is pretty much the same, about 340 kilometres an hour. You don't see many tracks where they go faster than 340 k's an hour. You know, but they're just unbelievable machines when it comes to how precise they are, how much money they put into it. You know, how
much a Formula One car cost?
I couldn't even put a figure on it, but, you know, you're talking, when you run a team, hundreds of millions of dollars every year. You know, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars every single year. Like
McLaren and Ferrari and that their team to run that team would be a couple of $100 million.
Yeah, easy. I mean, that it's not saying that they've got all that money. You know, there's just I'm not privy to exactly how these things, you know, are costed out, but, you know, they get some money from the television rights and all those kind of things, some money from sponsors, you know, all that. But it's so much money, it's ridiculous.
And what do you do there? Like, it's the same type of thing? Do you drive around the track and set up the cameras?
No, when I was working for Formula One, I was a pit producer. So this is, you know, 10 years ago now. So I was basically walking around the back of the pits with the reporter, trying to line up interviews, trying to shoot stories that were going to go on the television. Just sort of coordinating the cameraman and just making sure that everything we had to get got shot when it's supposed to be done and got back to be edited in time to make it on air.
I met you were doing the UFC countdown recently. So what other sports do you do other than those moto sports there?
So the other main contract I've got is the Tour Down Under in Adelaide, which is, you know, the first professional cycling race of the year on the UCI World Tour. So, you know,
So that gets all the big names down there?
Yeah, it gets all the... there's only so many top-level UCI races throughout the year, and Adelaide's the first one of the year. So it's where you see all the new bikes, all the new kit, all the new riders for the first time.
Can you explain UCI, etc.?
I think it's the Union Cyclist International. So
it's the same circuit as the Tour de France and
yes,
the
so
Italian,
it's the same,
Spanish.
Yep. So there's only three-week races every single year, and that's Tour de France, the Vuelta, which is the Spanish Tour, and the Tour de France. So they're the only 3-week races every single year. And then there's a whole bunch of 1-week races, and Adelaide's a 1-week race. So it's 6 stages essentially, and the time you get your time at the end of every single stage, and it's the person who's been the fastest over all the stages.
But the thing that makes the Adelaide race in particular exciting, is it because it's the first race, because the new equipment's out, because the sponsors have put out money in that for that one?
It's a little bit of everything, and the guys who actually pick the courses do an incredible job. The cyclists love coming to the Tour Down Under because the Tour Down Under, they look after the cyclists really, really well. They stay at the Hilton Hotel right in the middle of the city. A lot of the races overseas, they have to change hotels every night because they're riding about 100 or so Ks, and they'll go, around like that. Whereas in Adelaide, they ride out, they come back, stay at the same hotel, ride out, come back, stay at the same hotel. So the cyclists love it from that perspective. They love riding in Adelaide because Adelaide is very rider friendly, and the roads are really, really nice. And at that time of the year, a lot of the Europeans love coming out because it's nice and warm, and they're in the middle of winter at the time. And the other thing that's really, really incredible about the race is how tight it always is. So I think for the last about 8 years, no one's won. So they do about 900 kilometres of racing, and no one's won by a gap of more...
In 6 days?
Yeah.
Solid.
Yeah. And no one's won by a gap of more than 10 seconds. 2 people twice have finished on the same time, and they had to do a count back after 900 kilometres of racing. So that's, for me, the best thing, because I always say to everybody, it's really easy to make good television if the thing you're filming is amazing, is compelling, if the finishes are super tight, So when you're filming these kind of things, if these guys are, racing down to the last kilometre and there's nothing in it and everybody's on edge and no one knows who's going to win, that's when you get the best television.
That you talk about human element, and that to me, like, that cycling is insane. We had Craig Alexander here, the famous triathlete dude, and he's talking about how many kilometres he cycles in a year, and it was between 20 and 30,000, if not more. And he's saying that those cyclists do 50,000, some of them to 60, 70,000 kilometres a year of cycling. And I just think of that, and then I think of, like, when they go down, they go down a hill or something, and they're doing like 100 Ks an hour on these tiny little bikes.
Essentially in underwear.
Yeah, like you're dead as disco if you fall off,
Yeah.
And I think of all of that, and I think, like, also, like, some of those legs are 6-7 hours. Like, the thing I was going to ask you was, we don't have Alps in Adelaide though. So
no.
how what do they do about the climbs?
It's different kind of racing. It's more of so there's different cyclists. There's sprinters, so obviously the climbers, and then there's the guys in between. They call them the punchers. So they're the punchy cyclists that can sprint, but not sprint with the best. They can climb, but not climb with the best. So in Adelaide, what they do is they take them up short, sharp, punchy little climbs. So the racing is different. Tour de France, they take them up 20-kilometre climbs, and they just... Oh no.
Have you ever cycled?
Yeah, I cycle. Yeah.
Have you ever cycled?
When I was a kid, to school and back.
Record times. Like, when people say, like, a 20-kilometre climb, like, people don't understand, like, on a bike.
Yeah.
Like, I've done, like, a few kilometre climbs.
Yeah.
And not recently.
Yeah.
But, like, when the bike... It's like there's no neutral. Like,
no.
You don't flow.
No.
You're either pedaling or you roll backwards. It's crazy, man.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, they do a grind. That they're constantly in one sort of mode, and they're punching away. and they do little efforts, they call them, like little things to try and break the elastic band from the pack. You know, someone will go and it'll go fast, but he can't sustain it for very long. So then they try and recover real fast and then go again, and recover real fast and go again. So eventually, you know, hopefully they get a bit of a gap, and you know, if they can sustain it to the finish, you know, then they win the stage. In Adelaide, they do something very different. They just do like a short little 3, 4, 5 kilometre climb, but it's raced at a much faster pace. So it's almost like they're sprinting up these hills for 4 or 5 kilometres.
That's still brutal.
It is brutal. It is brutal.
You know,
and it's after you've, you know, already ridden 120, 130 kilometres. You know.
And then you got to sprint up 4Ks.
Yeah, to get to the finish and be the guy. You know, and everyone wants to be the guy, don't they? So, I mean, these guys are incredible specimens, because the fact that they can back it up every single day, recover, go again, is incredible. And that's when, you know, science really comes into it. You know, they've got to know how much to drink, how much to eat, you know, all those kind of little things that are going to make them, you know, go the next day and be able to not run out of energy.
And now you've recently started working with the UFC, or you've been working with the UFC for a while?
No, this is my first gig, yeah.
Oh, that was your first gig with the UFC?
Yeah.
Who did you work with? Which fighters did you work with?
No, that's it, just Rob. Rob's the first guy.
You only did with Rob?
Yeah. They just, they called me up, the UFC called me up. A friend who used to work with me at Supercars went overseas, and then he basically started working for the UFC overseas in Europe, and then the guys from California needed someone in Australia, so they said, you know, ring these guys up. So, I mean, that's the thing about our industry, is a lot of stuff that you get is, you know, recommendations from other people. So that's why you got to make sure, you know, every gig you do, you know, you do it well, you do it properly, because, you know, it'll lead to other work, and if you do a bad job, word gets around pretty fast that, you know, you're lazy, or you don't really care, or you don't do a good job, you know. So you got to make sure you take real pride in your work, and everything you do needs to be top notch.
It's funny that, like with Eli, we sometimes talk about this, like, you know, just with the networking element of things, and, you know, like, you know, people they're kind of dicky about it, and they're like, hi, my name's Fab, Darren, you must be Darren, here's my card, and they walk away going, I just networked. And they don't understand, like, no, that part was like some sort of weird introduction thing that you did. The actual networking happens when you're on time, when blah, 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 and the person goes, if I need something done, I'm going to do it. And like, me and Titus always laugh, because I work with Titus a fair bit. Well, we laugh after the fact, but we don't laugh while it's happening, where people just don't do their job.
Yeah.
You know, like, and that like, it really, really surprises me. Like, recently I was going to move to a place in the city, and Titus had a friend who knew the real estate person. Anyways, long story short, he organised for the girl to come out to see me, the real estate lady, and she said, yeah, I'm coming. Didn't bother turning up, didn't ring back. And because I'm like a OCD person with stuff like that, and I think, how do you, the guy that you're speaking to is your boss's mate, and you didn't even bother to do your job properly then, like, let alone if it was someone you didn't even know. And I just, then you go back to your thing where you go, you just, all the stuff you said, just make sure you do your job properly, and how far those simple things go. Just do what you're meant to do. And then anything over that is a bonus, you know what I mean? And it does pay off.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, I always say under promise, over deliver, you know, because I think it's the way you should be. I don't like the way, you know, some people put on that salesman hat and go, yeah, I could do this and I could do that, yeah, then like don't do any of it, you know.
Promise the world to deliver an atlas.
You know, nothing frustrates you more, you know. And at the end of the day, people remember that. You know, you're not selling yourself when you do things like that, or you're making yourself look like he's an idiot, you know. So just don't sell yourself, don't talk yourself up too much. Just do a good job, get on with it, you know, and then let the results speak for themselves.
You we're talking about the human element, and I'm just always think of that when I think of a cyclist. Like, I just think of how like how full on that is, like that sport. How does that compare for you with MotoGP? Like, although the speeds are like a lot slower, obviously, but I mean the human element factor.
MotoGP versus cycling. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously two different things, aren't there? Because MotoGP, you walk away with a lot more injuries. You know, I saw Danny Pedrosa once, and he's just a little guy. He's like 4 foot nothing, and he's got this absolute monster of a weapon underneath him, and it's like watching a little kid jump on, like this beast. And how he muscles that thing around the corner, I don't know. But he gets off the bike and literally has to like jump off the bike, and then he hobbles everywhere he goes because he's so busted up. Like, he's got busted up knees, ankles, hips, shoulders, everything. Just
from holding the bike?
Just from crashes, all the crashes that he's had, Same with motocross guys, anything that's got to do with motorbikes, at the end of your career, you're going to have, a lot of injuries.
If you make it there.
Yeah, if you make it, It's like all the freestyle guys nowadays, the freestyle motocross guys,
They're the ones that do the flips?
Yeah. I mean, I've filmed a lot of those guys in the past, and they just astound me. That's next level what they do, and how they don't,
How do they practice that without killing themselves at training?
A lot of the stuff they do now is a lot smarter than when I first started filming them. When I first started filming, they'd just go basically try it, and then hurt themselves a lot. But now with a lot of these things, they do stuff into a foam pit, and then if you got the right setup, they'll just practice flips and everything into a foam pit, and then have to get like a crane sort of thing to lift their bike out and put it back down, and then they'll practice it over and over and over again until they think they got it right, and then then they'll try and land it. But when it comes unstuck, it comes unstuck bad, like real bad.
Because have you ever seen it when they do when they jump 15 cars or something?
Yeah. I've even seen how they set it up. They actually set up on big blow up mattresses now. They're landing strips and stuff like that. So do you know what I mean? Obviously,
so they can practice, you mean?
Yeah, no, just when they do their shows, so Krusty Demons and stuff like that, when they go to places, they're set up as a proper ramp that they hit, but their landing ones now is like a huge jumping castle. They blow it up like that, and it obviously helps with the impact and stuff like that with injuries, but still, like the height they get and the speed they're going, you could land on, do you know what I mean, fluffy pillows, and it's not going to tickle.
Because I see that, and I used to always think, how do you practice that?
No.
Because I like say I liken it to sparring. The guys that spar too much or too hard, and I think like you just had a fight. Like all your brain is no different to the impact it took, whether it was at sparring or you may as well have gotten paid for that fight. You know what I mean? and I liken it to that, and I think like, did you just jump that distance at training? Like, I don't know. Like, is that, and before they used to just try it at home?
Yeah, before they used to try. I mean, they've got a lot smarter. I remember once I was filming this little kid, and it was basically another guy who's very well-known motocross guy at the time, and who's since died. And he was going to do Australia's first ever backflip. It was at the Adelaide Showgrounds. And he had his little 16-year-old neighbour who was with him, and he went up and did the backflip, landed it, and his little 16-year-old neighbour who'd been practicing on the farm and landing it every single time, just got all caught up in the spotlight and everything, and just didn't do the trick properly. Essentially, he just stalled the bike in midair, and the bike came down from about 40 feet in the air straight on top of him on the landing ramp.
Killed him?
No, he was in a bad way. He spent about next 2 months in Adelaide Hospital with broken sternum and hip and a whole bunch of broken ribs and busted up shoulder and stuff like that. And 16, that's a big injury. But from all accounts, he got better. But
did he go on to keep riding motorbikes?
I've never heard of him since. So
I hope not.
Yeah. You got to think something like that will have a pretty massive impact on you for the rest of your life. But those guys, they've got that go for it mentality. If you're going to do that, you have to have that crazy kind of different mindset,
Big wave surfing? You ever filmed big wave surfing?
I have not. Well, no, sorry. I've filmed, just recently. We did a thing called Cape Fear for Red Bull.
Oh yeah,
down at Cape Solander. Yeah. So I was in charge of the television production for that and directed it. And
how big were those waves that day?
They were big. They call it a slab wave. So essentially,
it crashes on rocks. Eh?
Yeah, it crashes right on rocks, and it's big and it's heavy and it's thick and it just crunches down right next to the rocks. And a guy called Jughead, he landed on his head like on the rocks and was underwater for a while, like knocked out. And
how did they get him out?
He popped up and didn't know where he was, and a whole bunch of guys on jet skis managed to get in there and scoop him up before the next wave got him out, and then basically had him there and had to take him to hospital. And he had no hair, so he was bald head, and he'd split like the whole way over. So he came up the next day with a whole bunch of stitches in his head, like, oh well, that's just what happens. I knew the risks before I did it, but that day they ended up stopping the competition not too long after that because the tide was dropping, the waves were getting bigger, it was going on to really, pretty much dry rock, and they ended up stopping it and then starting the competition the next day, which was great because Red Bull did the right thing. They really did the right thing.
So when you do that type of, have you surfed?
Yeah, I surf. Yeah.
What can you give me a perspective on what that means in relation to those types of waves? Because when I see big wave surfing, it scares me. Yeah, probably more than because you can sort of control the motorbike. I suppose you can slow it down. Yeah, you don't have to. But like once you're in the water, and you took off on the wave, like you. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, I've paddleboarded once. Yeah, very badly. But you can't do anything. No, you can't even bail.
No, once you're out there, you're relying on your fitness and your skills and your waterman knowledge, to basically get around and make sure that you are, when you're out there, in the right spot at the right time. You're reading the conditions, not putting yourself, bless you, and not putting yourself in the wrong spot. And again, the biggest I've been out is like 12 foot. Waves, which are still pretty good. Like the faces are, probably like 20, 25 foot.
That's big.
That's big. I didn't catch a wave. I was just on the edge of the wave, and it was big. And
where was this at?
It's a place called Nias off the coast of Sumatra. I went there and basically wanted to surf some big waves, and you could paddle out there without any risk of getting in the impact zone. You could just paddle out there and sit on the edge and watch the wave. And it was incredible. Watching those guys charge was just nuts.
Just the power of the big waves.
The nuts. And, you're lying down. And when you're lying down, the waves seem so much bigger as well as when you're standing up. But, those guys now, you watch when they crash, and a lot of them come up pretty fast now because, they've got like a buoyancy device that they can pull, and an airbag blows up inside their wetsuit and they'll pop up to the surface. And that's okay if you pop up after the first wave, because a lot of the times they'll come up after about 20 seconds, 15, 20 seconds. If another wave crashes in the spot and they're not up yet, and that's when they're going to get into real big trouble.
When you surf like Indonesia, Sumatra, that area, you're crashing on reef for the most part, eh? Yeah. Coral reef. Yeah. It'll cut you up real bad.
In Nias, it's not too bad. It's sort of like a sandy reef. But, I've been around the Mentawais where, you're going onto pretty dry, it's only pretty much the height of this desk where the water is.
Like a metre.
Yeah, a metre or so.
How big's the wave crashing into a metre?
You know what? The face is like, double the size of that wall kind of thing.
So we're talking about 6 metres. Yeah. 7 metres probably.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Yeah, and that's not a
big wave.
For me, that's a big wave, but for a lot of experienced surfers, that's not a massive wave. For me, that's as an inexperienced sort of punter, that's a big wave. That scares me. But to a lot of other guys, that's just play.
What about you, Eli? You're a surfer as well, eh?
Back when I was young, I used to surf. I did nippers and stuff like that. We grew up on the coast. We all sort of get into it a bit and that.
Did you charge big waves?
I used to like to think I did, but do you know what I mean? The same thing, when you're laying down and you're out there with your boys, do you know what I mean? Like you think they're big waves, but on a real scale of things, they're not big waves.
How big are we talking about?
Oh, I remember, we were 8 foot and stuff like that. I think probably is the biggest surf. When it used to get bigger than that, we used to go out and just have a body bash. Do you know what I mean? Because you don't have that board attached to you, so you feel like you're a little bit more safer, and that you can use your swimming skills. Just put on a pair of flippers or something like that, and you feel a lot more safer. But yeah, 8 foot maybe.
Am I correct with what I said earlier? Like, it just as a non-surfer, like where there, when you go back to all the other stuff we're talking about, the human element. Like if you're surfing somewhere like Cape Fear, and the waves are big and it's dry, and you're going to land, because it's a big thick wave for those people that are listening that don't surf. No, it's a big, massive, thick wave that crashes on rock. So if you get caught and you crash on the rock, like you're crashing on rock.
Well, pretty much where the wave breaks, the cliff is maybe like 20, 30 feet away.
So it's 10 meters away.
Yeah. So again, it's where the wave's getting pushed up against a rock face. So the wave's getting shoved up, and then it's breaking over a shallow rock shelf. So there's a lot of backwash coming through. So the height of the water that's in front of you is changing constantly. But it would only be like a few meters deep, and you've got like a massive, massive wave coming towards you. So the scariest things for those guys was just basically knowing when to swim, when not to swim, when to take yourself with the backwash, where the rips were going, all those kind of things. And that's where the knowledge comes in, because as you know, when you've got enough knowledge, you stop being scared of it because you understand it, and that's pretty much like any sport. Once you understand anything, and when you understand it well enough, it stops being scary because you know what to do in the right situations. And those guys have logged, no doubt thousands of hours in the water doing things like that. So, for me, watching it, it was scary. For them, it was scary. But at that moment, they'd be thinking, don't panic. Whatever you do, don't panic. Just go with it. You know what to do. And they instinctively know how to get out of these situations where the majority of people in the world would just drown,
I'd be dead.
Yeah.
Panic is the big thing. It's a huge factor in a lot of, do you know what I mean? Especially being out in the surf. I've been out there where you just repeatedly, you just get caught. Do you know what I mean? Like you said, you come up and one's dumping on you another. As soon as you start panicking, you get tired, you know what I mean, your breathing goes, everything. It's huge, and it would probably be that in a lot of motocross sports and that too. As soon as they start going, you see the guys when they get the death wobbles, they reckon you just got to, do you know what I mean, not panic and try to stay nice and loose, but you try to overcorrect it.
And away you go.
Yeah.
Away you go. Yeah.
So yeah, essentially once you're on the wave, there's nothing you can do. As far as you can do skill, but you can't bail. You can't put the brakes on. You can't.
No. And you don't really know, like, for me, out of all the sports that I've ever done, and I've done, like, I love to do, all sorts of different sports, surfing is by far the hardest because everything about it is changing. At every different break, it's different. The swell is different. The swell direction is different. The size is different. So it's not like you're on a skateboard ramp and you know exactly the transition and exactly how it's going to come down. Everything is always changing. So when those guys are charging those big waves, they don't 100% know what's going to happen. That's why you see so many wipeouts. Because they're trying to make it to the edge. They're trying their hardest to make it, but they don't know if the whole wave's going to collapse on them, or if they're going to get to the bottom and they're going to hit a bump and lose the board or anything like that. So they're really gutsy, those guys. They really do go for it.
So I saw what you did with Rob now, right? But what was your role with Rob in the UFC this time round? Like, what was your whole thing that you were doing? Like, what was your job title, etc.?
I was a producer.
And what do you think of that compared to other sports you've done?
Working with Rob was great. I have the utmost respect for the UFC, and I have done a very, very tiny amount of martial arts when I was younger and stuff, and how much a kick hurts and how much a punch hurts, and I just look at him and just go, he's dedicated to his sport. He looks like he's really focused. And there's so many athletes that you meet, and the ones that right at the top, they've got that eye. They've got, you know that they've got that quiet confidence about them, and they know that they're going to do well, And Rob looks like he's one of those guys who has got that quiet confidence about him. He has a little bit of fun. He's a little bit cocky every now and again. He's very super competitive. Like I watched him play a game of handball in a warm-up in the gym.
I smashed him in that game. I did. I'm just saying. I'm just not here to brag or be a dickhead about it, but he stood no chance.
Well, he was. They were just every single little thing about that game that he was playing that we watched was very funny, because they didn't want to give away a point the whole time, and that's that real competitive beast coming out at him. So it was good to watch him. It was good to see him train. It was good to see his workload. I don't know how these guys train all the time, but it was interesting for me to see how many Ks he logged up going to the different sessions, how many sessions he did a day, at what times of the day, and the thing that I was always wondering the whole time was, what's he do for recovery? Well, he just basically rests, because his theory was if your body is conditioned to be doing that much exercise all the time, you shouldn't need for it to recover. It's just used to doing that much sort of, workload. And that was interesting, because you watch a lot of other sports and they come back and they recover, they get massages and they do ice baths and they have to do this and that, and he's just logging up hours in all the different gyms, doing everything that he's doing. So it was good.
I think because involved in his training, I think a lot of the stuff where he's saying, like, the way that it's also done, the way that the program's put together, it's like there's a sequential pattern to it. So the recovery is embedded in the training sessions, but he's probably not going to explain it to you like that. So there's a lot of so it's based off a periodization cycle. So there'll be weeks that have periodization, that have more recovery in them than others, and then it starts to build again.
Gotcha.
So the other thing with it is we look at, like, again, holistically, like his whole life. Like, if for example, if you go out and drink alcohol, it's not a sin, it's not bad, whatever, but that's going to affect days of recovery.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I see, I work with other sports as well, and I see the guys do the ice baths and everything and da-da-da-da-da, which I'm not against or whatever, and then I see them after the game on Saturday getting blind. Do you know what I mean? And you think, like, well, why'd you bother doing anything, if you're going to get... Because that's going to take you 2-3 days to recover from. That's
yeah.
No, you don't even have to get blind. You just have to have enough beers that it's affecting your hydration levels and anything else.
Yep.
But there's the thing I was going to ask you was, when you see these people that you deal with, and they don't have to just be athletes that you deal with in motocross. You obviously deal with management, lawyers, accountants, whatever. What are the common characteristics that you see with with the successful people?
I think, kind of like I said before, they all just seem like they're driven. I like a lot of the guys at the top of the food chain are really good guys as well. I think the reason they get there is because if you're going to be at the top of anything, you need a certain amount of people around you who are looking after you, helping you, and if you're an idiot, you're not nice, you're not respectful, then everyone's going to drop you like a stone, and you need a whole bunch of people around you to make you successful, and I always say, from my perspective, and it's my sort of rule of thumb kind of way to know what kind of personality you're dealing with straight away, is if I walk in with my camera crew and I've got my, my cameraman and my sound guy and maybe an assistant and me, and, I go in and I meet that person for the first time and they shake my hand, and then if they go and say hello to the cameraman, the sound guy and the other person, you're dealing with a nice person, and he's respectful and he doesn't just care about the people at the top, he cares about everybody in the whole room, and they're a lot of the times the guys that you go, yeah, he's a nice guy and he's going to go somewhere. And pretty much all the top line guys that I've always dealt with, they always do that, you know.
It's funny, like sometimes you it happens, you know, like you meet people like it's fun. I'm like that as well. Like I think that as well straight away, and it's one of the things because I travel with Rob a lot, and like a lot of the times, like now he's smarter now. He gets it now. He is a smart dude to begin with. It's not like it takes a lot, but a lot of it is like it's not how they treat him, you know. And he realised this as well. It's how they treat everyone around, because like, to be real, there's only like physically no one's gonna come up and go blah, although you do get more on every now and then, but like, you know, you're middleweight champion of the world, you have good money, you have blah blah blah, generally people are going to be good to you, you know, but it's how people speak to everyone else around you. And I've had that where I am somewhere, wherever, and like some dude will speak to me like I'm a gopher, you know what I mean? And I think like, fuck you talking to, you know what I mean? And then they figure out that you're not the gopher because of the interactions you're having, and then like now you want to talk. Do you know what I mean? Now we're going to have a conversation.
Yeah. And
that person to me, and maybe I don't know, I might have to see a psychologist because I've got like deep-seated issues. But that person to me is like, no, mate, you're furniture now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can go get fucked. I don't even want to have a conversation.
They've
with
already
you.
made their bed.
Well, man, it happened to me. It was funny. We went to New York and we had to go somewhere, and like I was like standing next to Rob, and Titus had to go upstairs to do something, and I don't care who I was. It wouldn't even matter who I was. And the guy comes downstairs, says hello to Rob, and like I wasn't there. You know what I mean? And then Rob's like, "Oh, this is da da da," and he has, you know, it was you, and the guy's like, "Oh, how are you?" Like this. And I thought, wow, someone didn't make the football team at school, you know. And we went upstairs. Everything, I just sat down. I was reading. The guy sat where Eli is on his phone. You know what I mean? Didn't even acknowledge me. Then Titus came out, and we started talking about something. And it was obvious that, like, no, we don't have, like, myself, Titus, all the other coaches. None of us have a relationship. Like, no one's really the head coach. No one's like there's things that I might have final say on.
There's no hierarchy.
No, there isn't, like, in as far as, but it's a good thing when you're working with good professionals that everyone understands their role. Like, there is a hierarchy if Justin Fitzgerald is talking about boxing.
Yes.
He's the man.
Yes.
Nobody, whatever. Yes. If Justin Lang says, look, this is what he needs to do because this is, I don't have zero say in it. You know, like Justin and I have the same degree, but I went into coaching, he went into rehab and whatnot, but that's his field. That's cool. But Titus and I were just talking about something, and then like the guy realized like, oh, there isn't, like, we're not obsequious towards Rob. So then he started like, now we're friends, and I thought, no, go fucking lie in traffic, you piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like, I got nothing to say to you. I was still nice to him.
Yeah.
But it's that exact thing, like what you're saying. Like, if you walked in holding the camera and your mate walked in like he was a producer, would I have to, like, should I treat you both different? You know what I mean? Like,
it's really hard. You know, like, I try not to judge, you know, being in, doing what I do. You see a lot of different people in a lot of different situations. You know, working on an event, you know, people can be tired and stressed and have worked crazy hours, you know, and people turn into different people when they're like 100%. That. And, you know, stress can do different things to different people. And all the way back to, you know, I look at different people's personalities and I try never to judge, because you don't know what's just happened to them, you know. He might have his dog might have died that day. Do you know what I mean? You know, like, you don't know.
No, I agree with that as well.
And it's really hard, because sometimes if, you know, you get an impression of someone and, you know, sometimes the first impressions are not the best ones, or sometimes they can be the best ones, but that's not actually what that person's like, you know. So you have to read different people's personalities.
But there is a thing with what you're saying.
Yes,
like, there is
100%.
a thing where
over an amount of time, you get enough data. You know, get a cluster of data on that person. You can judge them over a little bit of time. But I think it's always hard to judge someone like straight away. And that's, you know, in my job. So when I was working with Rob, You know, I was the TV producer, or as I call myself, the pointing guy, because I just say, hey, go over there and do that. Can you please, you know, film that? Can we do this kind of thing? And, you know, you got to work with people all the time, and you really got to basically manage different people and different personalities all the time. And, you know, if I spend 2 days with Rob, I'm always going to try and be on the right side of him. I'm not going to be too pushy. I'm going to try and get what I need to get. But if he doesn't want to do it, I can't force him to do it. You know, so when you're working with people, when you're filming people, and when you're hanging out with them, and you're trying to get the best out of them, you've got to read them, but you also got to read different, you know, situations and people around you that are going to affect, you know, what you're doing as well. So, and when it comes, like I said, when it comes back to judging people, I try not to judge them, you know, too quickly. But after you get a little bit of cluster of data, then you know sort of after that time, you know, who you're dealing with. But then again, at the same time, you know, when I've come across a person that I don't like, you know, he's not going to take my energy.
Nah.
You know, so at the end of the day, you know, if you're going to be like that, well, obviously you're like that because of some reason.
Yeah,
that's cool. Whatever. See you later.
Yeah, I'm not your mum. I don't have to. You know what I mean? I don't have to fix this problem.
Yeah, like, that's right.
You continue to be like this.
Yeah,
you know
that's
what I mean?
right.
But it's an interesting thing that what you say in regards to that, because I feel like it goes back to and one of the things that I see with successful people, it's just the network of people that they have around them, and you don't have that network of people with you being a tool. You don't get that. Like, you don't get to
correct.
to if you won't say hello to, like, my mum was like that with me since I was little. Like, if I walked into a room and I didn't say hello to everyone in the room, like, it was just like to the point that now in my own gym, like, I say hello to people and they go out one door, come back out the other. And I said this to a lady the other day, and I went, "Hey, how you doing?" And she goes to me, "You said hello to me." And I'm like, "Fuck, mum, you're in my head. Leave me alone." Because it's like so drummed into my head. You know what I mean? Like,
it's good.
Yeah, and
old-fashioned respect. It's good.
Yeah, and I would just feel that it's like it's lacking with some people. I don't know. I'm not going to say it's lacking in this generation, because I only know this time. I'm sure that there were knobs whole way through history, you know. So, but that's something that I see, like the networks around them, and that those attentions to details, because like and I don't even know, like, unless you explain to me what the hierarchy is, I wouldn't even know, nor do I care if there is a hierarchy between like yourself and the cameraman, because I don't know that industry, and I don't even know if the cameraman supersedes you in the chain of command. I don't know that, anyways, nor do I care.
Yeah.
But you don't even know where that guy's going to be in a year. Just from a self-serving perspective, you don't even know. He might be the coffee boy now, and in 5 years he's doing whatever, you know. And you're just being a dickhead just to make yourself feel good. And one of the big characteristics I see of people that are successful, and by that I don't just mean financially, is that just having a healthy network of people, and just understanding like that, you know, who you're talking to.
So true.
It is very funny like that. Are you? So how much further involved are you with Rob moving forward now?
Well, that's it. You know, like you know, the next time I'll probably see Rob will be on the television when I'm looking at the stuff that we shot with him the other day. So I'll be very interested to see how that came up. So I went away, wrote down a whole bunch of notes about what we shot, and then sent it to the guys, you know, in the States, and then what they do with it now is up to them.
How do you feel like combat sports versus the other stuff that you do? Had like the human element, I mean, is very evident in combat sports. So what's your feelings towards it?
Combat. Yeah. You know what, the first, I mean, I've always loved that kind of stuff. My dad did a little bit of amateur boxing, you know, very small little bit of amateur boxing when, you know, he was young. So, you know, he used to like, you know, watching fights, and we grew up watching wrestling and all that kind of stuff on TV. You know, I've always loved watching boxing and stuff. And then when UFC, you know, I'd heard a little bit about it on the internet and things like that, and I was like, okay, wow, that's pretty crazy. And then when it made it onto cable television in Australia, blew my mind. Not for the fact that what they were doing, just the fact that the generational mind shift and everything to be able to put that stuff on the television has changed. Because, you know, 10 years before that, there's no way in the world UFC would have got on television. It was too brutal. It was too in your face, you know, and now they've done a great job, I think, of making it professional, look good, look smart. You know, the way that it's the refereed, you know, the way that it's, you know, taken care of. It's an amazing, you know, thing, the way it's basically evolved over the time. Even, you know, UFC, since it first made it onto television, and the way they fought, you know, to what they do now, and you've got to be the complete package. Back then, you had a certain skill set, and then, you know, it was one skill set versus the other skill set. Now, pretty much if you're lacking in any one particular thing, you're going to get found out. So you have to basically be, you know, the whole package if you're going to go the whole way. So, you know, I love watching it. You know, I love watching the skills that these guys have. You know, the fact that the fights don't last 30 seconds still, you know, is amazing to me, because the way they can dodge, weave, pump, you know, block things, and then just the stamina to be able to go, you know, 5 minutes in a ring. So we do, you know, in my, I do a little bit of CrossFit, and we do this one workout. It's called Fight Gone Bad, and basically it's, I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Yeah. It's like a 5 minute workout, and then you get a minute's rest, and then you do another 5 minute workout, and then you get a minute's rest, do another 5 minute workout, and by the end of it, you're torched. You know, completely torched, and that's why they call it Fight Gone Bad, because the UFC guy came and did it, and he's like, you know, what do you think of that training? And he said, it's like a fight gone bad, because it absolutely smashed you, you know. And, you know, I look at those guys and, you know, how exhausted they must be and how hard they go. And, you know, when you're exhausted and nothing's working right, like you start forgetting things when you're exhausted, you can't, you know, move well, and, you know, all those kind of things start happening to you. And these guys have to basically stay on it the whole time, even when they're completely exhausted, I'm sure.
And you have to stay on.
Yeah, because if they don't, you know, things are going to end bad for you. And that's the thing, you know, I've got a lot of respect for those guys, because I think the whole package now is just unbelievable to watch.
Okay, Eli, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just what I was thinking about when the UFC contact you and asked you to do a program like the Countdown, which I you know, I mean, I really enjoy them programs.
Yeah,
and that. Is there a particular thing that they want you to capture and that, or do they just really want you to follow his life and capture that, or do they push you to say, like, we really want to get this out of this one?
They send me a style guide.
Yep. So,
you know, roughly what they want. So when we go and film in training, they want us to film 75% real time. So, and then 25% in slow-mo. And then when we're filming at 75% real time, they ask us to politely ask the people in the gym to not have any music going. We try and basically mic up the coaches, and so they can get a couple of natural sound grabs with the coach doing a little bit of coaching and all that kind of stuff. They tell us roughly how they want the interviews framed, and then for the sit-down interviews, they give us a list of questions. And then they say, this is the basic questions. And then, you know, if you think you're getting something good out of that one question, elaborate a little bit more and try and get a little bit more out of that. And then if you've seen some stuff while you've been, you know, spending time with them, and you want them to talk about that because you think that's going to be good footage, then ask a few more questions. So they give you a rough outline of what they want, and then, you know, things happen organically after that. Yeah.
Do you enjoy that format of like storytelling versus I don't know, what would it be called? What will you do with your motorsports?
So
because this is more like storytelling, kind of. You're directing and
Yep. So, you know, over the years, you know, I started off editing, and then I've done a little bit of camera work, and then, you know, done more editing, and then producing, and now live directing. So, you know, I still do pretty much a little bit of everything. what I enjoy is when I go and do something like we've just done, spend a little bit of time with someone, and then I come back and actually edit the thing and put it together. And that's where the storytelling element really sort of, you know, comes out, because then you get to control, you know, everything that you've just done and seen, and you get to actually tell the story with the editing. And editing is like, I love it. You know, when you get in the edit suite and you've got heaps of really good vision, and you've got a great subject, and you've got a great interview, and then just writing a little bit of script just to tie the whole thing together and editing the whole package, and then you sit back at the end and go, that's the whole thing. That's the thing I really like to do, you know, when I do stuff like that with Rob. Unfortunately, in this case, I don't get to do the final stage because, you know, that gets sent overseas. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with it. Would
you like to go more into that storytelling sort of role, or do you like doing what you do?
Oh, look, I mean, you know, so directing live television. So when I'm working for supercars, I direct not for the supercar races, but for the support categories. So the Carrera Cup, which is the Porsches, and the Australian GT Championship, which is like the Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Porsches, all those kinds of things. When they're racing at the same event as the supercars, then I get to direct the cameras. So you know, going from camera to camera to camera around the track, and you're following the action. I love doing that because it's adrenaline charged. You know, you can't make a mistake. You're always trying to cover the best bit of action. You're constantly scanning, like, you know, 20 cameras or so, looking at everything, you know, seeing what's going on and trying to read the play. You know, is that guy going to make an overtake here? Is he going to, you know, do it a couple corners later? Making sure you're covering that bit of action. Knowing what's going on in that championship, if there's a leader in the championship and, you know, someone's crashed out and he's, you know, in the championship running. Just trying to put all these things together instantly is a massive adrenaline rush. Like, directing live television is the biggest adrenaline rush that I've ever had working, you know, because you've got to be on it. And it's like you've just basically been competing yourself, because you finish at the end and go, okay, that kind of worked, I think that was good, I think we covered everything. And then, as we say in television, you can't put excuses to air. No. You know, that's one of our favourite sayings, because you can't make a mistake. You know, you can't make a mistake and go, oh, sorry, I just did that. Sorry, viewers. You need to be on it. You know, so you're really trying to make no mistakes at all. And making no mistakes at all, as you know, it doesn't matter what you're doing, is really hard. So if you can come out the back and say pretty much everything went 95%, you know, to plan, then, you know, you've done a great job. And every single time I've directed live sport, you know, you finish and you've got like a little bit of a buzz, you know. So it's a fun thing to do.
What things have you got on the going forward? What are some of the stuff you're looking at doing now moving forward? Like, what's the rest of the year look like for you?
So I do the whole supercars calendar. So tomorrow I'm off to Perth for 4 days, and then, you know, that rolls into every about 2 or 3 weeks. I'm away for about 3 days, and then I come back, and then I'll edit a couple of highlights programs together. And then throughout the year, I travel to Adelaide, you know, a weekend here, a couple of days here, a couple of days there, having meetings, driving the stages for the Tour Down Under, because that pretty much takes me the whole year to put together, because that's a big sort of thing. So being in charge of all the television, I plan out everything from the television rundown, and every single day we make essentially four television shows. So we make a live television show that goes for 4 hours on Channel 9, and then inside that I have to plan and coordinate how we're going to also make a 1 hour live television show that goes around the rest of the world. So that's a bit of a dance between different directors, and knowing sort of when we need to put some talking heads on a panel on Channel 9 while the race keeps on talking, while commentators are going over here, that's going out over there. You know, these guys are basically talking on air, that's going out over there, and just, you know, having a plan to coordinate all that. And then when we finish at the end of the day, we've got a group of editors, and they basically make a 1 hour highlights package that goes on Channel 9 later on that night. And then we also have to make a half an hour highlights program that goes to the rest of the world that night as well. So that's 4 different television programs that we make every single day, and it's my job to write down the schedule of every single day, like from minute to minute, to everything from when the cameramen have to be ready, when we need to be filming, when they need to be on set, when the edited packages need to be there, to following the race. So when we follow the race, the organisers make up a point-to-point of everything that's going to happen. So they go on an average of 40 kilometres an hour. The bikes are going to go 40 kilometres an hour, roughly on average. So we know when they're going to get to certain points. So at certain points, I'll know there's a great downhill section there. Don't go to a commercial break there. During here, they're going to go on a long straight thing through a paddock. We can put a commercial break in there. At any one time, we've got 3 helicopters in the air.
Do you have to coordinate all of that?
Yeah, all of that.
You coordinate all of that?
Yeah, so I go to...
Okay.
That's fucking work.
So, I need to figure out where the helicopter's going to refuel, because they can only stay up for 2 hours. We're in there for 4 hours. While they're refueling, we can't have 2 helicopters down. So I have to figure out where we can basically leapfrog a helicopter ahead. He refuels, he comes up, then the next one goes down. While that's happening, I have to figure out when that's going to happen, where to put the commercial breaks in to cover that.
Do you have an algorithm or something, or do you just go off experience?
Just experience.
Yeah.
I just sit down for weeks and just try and think about everything, because television is a lot like everything most people do in life. It's really just thinking about getting ahead of the game. I always say to everybody, always try and be proactive, not reactive. If you're thinking about things that could go wrong, and always have a backup plan for everything before it happens, then you're not going, oh, that's just happened, I don't have a plan, I don't know what to do now. You've always got to have a couple of different scenarios in your head of what you could do and how you could cover for things. I've always got like little made up edited packages. So if everything went wrong and all the helicopters fell out the sky and all the satellites broke, then I've got some stuff that I could play to air for 5 or 10 minutes to cover for time. You've always got a backup plan of what you're going to do. So it's a big animal to put together, the Tour Down Under, and it's a lot of people to coordinate, and a lot of different things can go wrong and have gone wrong. Like we've got to talk to air traffic control about 3 helicopters coming around the city through their flight path, and every now and again the air traffic controllers have got it wrong and mistimed it, and we've had to stop all the helicopters. So all of a sudden you start to lose pictures, and we go, oh, let's just put this quick interview to air. Then a minute later all the helicopters come back, and then people wouldn't know at home because we've just rolled in an interview, no one knows anything, and then we're back to the action again. So yeah, it's a lot of things to think about.
How bad can it go?
Well, I mean,
or do you have enough contingency plans?
Yeah, you got to have enough. I mean, there's things to think about, like it's the middle of summer, but if it rains and the clouds are below a certain altitude, then the helicopters can't fly because they have to have line of sight to see each other. If there's 3 helicopters around each other, they have to be able to see each other, and if they can't see each other, it's low cloud, well, then they can't fly. Our motorbikes that are filming have a helicopter each. So the signal goes up to the helicopter and then bounces from the helicopter back down to us at the end of the race. So if they can't fly, we don't have any pictures of the whole race. So
what do you do?
You just got to think on your feet. You got to have things in place, like hopefully a lot of the times they can fly fairly low. At the worst, if it came down to 1,500 feet, that'd be really, really bad rain. So most of the time the clouds are up at about 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 feet. But when they're going over the Adelaide Ranges, that's roughly about 2,000 feet. So every now and again the rain can get that bad that it can come down to that altitude. So you just got to think, well, hopefully it's going to take about 5 or 10 minutes from them to get through the highest point, which has happened, and we've just had to roll in a couple of interviews and go to the studio and talk about the tactics of the race, or talk about a couple of things, and then we come back to it when the pictures come back. But to viewers at home, they wouldn't know anything. They're just like, oh, we're just crossing to the studio.
So sort of going on an actually different topic, because as you're talking I was thinking about this. As a kid, what do you think you were going to do?
I thought I was going to be a professional AFL footballer. That's...
Were you a naughty kid at school?
Oh yeah, it's terrible. and I wasn't good at school, and you know, I got held back in grade 2.
Oh, did you? I repeated kindergarten.
Yeah, I mean, these are things that happen, and you don't know these kind of things, what they're going to do to you later on in life. You know, from a stigma point of view.
Why'd you get held back in year 2?
I think, you know, at that time there was a lot of things going on in my life. My parents got divorced. Obviously, it was a stressful time for me. You know, I probably wasn't dealing with things very well. I don't think I was, you know, nowadays I think it's great that they can go, kids learn in certain ways. You've got visual learners, you've got people that want to ask questions. I'm one of those people, I have to ask questions. So sitting down in a class where the teacher's just speaking at you, I'm not learning anything. You know, I can't sit down and read a manual of anything still to this day and it makes sense to me. You know, I can't do that. But I can, if I can ask someone questions or, you know, try and figure it out for myself, then that's the way that I learn. So I was never very good at school because it was just a teacher talking at you. That's why I left when I was 16, because I was like, I felt stupid, you know, and I felt stupid for many, many, many years to come after that. And then it took me a long time to figure out that I'm not stupid. You know, it's just basically what happened in my past, you know. And I just say to a lot of kids nowadays and people coming up, you know, like a lot of things can affect your confidence during your life. And that was one of those things that affected my confidence for years to come. And I think confidence, you know.
School you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think confidence is one thing that, you know, people need to work on in school a lot more, and, you know, help kids with their confidence, because, you know, I'm not saying being cocky or anything like that, but just being confident enough to stand up and talk in front of a group of people. You know, like for years, you know, when I was a kid, I would not be able to, you know, speak in front of that many people because I was always, you know, so I just thought I was silly. You know, I couldn't learn at school. I just thought I was dumb. You know, now later on in life, I just figured out it's just the way I learnt. You know, and I just hope that lots of kids nowadays just... And
your skill set, because I dare say that they didn't have that. Your skill set at...
Yeah.
You know, like I'm a tape teacher. I've been a tape teacher for a long, long time. And, you know, sometimes you talk to parents or whatever and they say, well, if my son or daughter finishes this qualification, are they going to be able to get a job out of it? And I think, like, they've got to finish their qualification first. Then they've got to go out and work and figure out who they are. And I don't know, like there is no degree for what I do. Do you know what I mean? Like I did a health science degree, but what I actually do, there's no degree for it. Like there's no degree for, like, I'm sure there is something, but like for what you do, you know what I mean? For being Darren Harvey, there's no degree, Bachelor of Darren Harvey, you know what I mean?
It's all experience. I mean, kids come through school nowadays and they've done, you know, so much more than I, you know, ever did in the first 10 years of my career, you know, but they come in and they don't want to work at the ground level. They don't want to start off, you know, being, you know, an assistant to the producer or something like that. They want to come off, they want to be the boss straight away. They don't want to do the time, you know, which is, you know, you can see that. I've seen that in a whole bunch of kids that come in nowadays. And, you know, now we pretty much just hire people in their 30s, because by their 30s, you know, they've figured out what they are and who they are, and, you know, they're a bit more understanding that, you know, where you got to start out and what you got to do, because they've by then figured it out, you know. But I'm glad nowadays that they've figured out that all kids are different and they're not just all the same, you know. And I hope that, you know, everybody out there who's learning just realizes that, you know, just because you don't learn like that doesn't mean you're stupid. You just got to go out there and find your niche in life and figure out how you do learn, because everyone learns. Everyone, you know, takes in knowledge, and every day we're a little bit different than the day before, because we learn a little bit every single day. You know, you just got to take one or two things out of every single day and keep on accumulating knowledge, and, you know, hopefully by the time you're old like me, you'll accumulated enough knowledge to work you up the food chain.
How did you, or when do you remember breaking the stigma with as far as education and as far as like going, hey, hang on a second, I'm not dumb.
Probably only about 10 years ago, to be honest.
For real?
Yeah, maybe not even. I just went through a period in my life where a whole bunch of bad stuff happened, you know, and, you know, I think the reason that I did so well early on in life is because I beat myself up so much internally, you know, and was like, you got to do better, you know, you got to be smarter, you know, and because I beat myself up internally and was like, nah, you got to work harder and you got to do this and you got to do that. And, you know, I worked some pretty crazy hours and was working 2 jobs at a time and things that I tell people nowadays and they're like, I can't believe you did all that at the same time.
Like what kind of?
You know, I was working, so I worked at Foxtel for a while and I had a full-time job at Foxtel and then doing on-air presentation. So my funny claim to fame is I pushed the button to turn Foxtel on. So I came over to Sydney to work at Foxtel. I got a job working in their on-air presentation, which is, again, like I said before, putting all the stuff to air, and you've got to go through a log of everything, and it was all brand new digital stuff, and I didn't know how it worked, and me and a whole bunch of other guys went there and basically geeked out and figured out all this stuff worked. And then because, you know, me and another guy stayed back all the time and tried to figure out how everything worked, they tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, do you want to push the button that turns on all this stuff for the first time? And I was like, yeah, no worries. So I got to, you know, push the button to turn Foxtel on for the first time. So then I had that full-time job going, and then someone else called me and said, do you want to do some editing for me? And I didn't want to miss out on that opportunity because it was editing, snowboarding and surfing and all that kind of stuff. So I said, yep, no worries. So I was essentially working 2, you know, 40-hour a week jobs at the same time, because I was working 12 hours a day, you know, 2 days a week doing that. We were working 12-hour shifts. So we work 12 hours, have a day off, 12 hours, have 3 days off, kind of thing. And it just sort of rotated around like that throughout the fortnight. And then I would just basically do all of my editing around my, you know, other jobs. So I was getting, you know, 3-4 hours sleep and then editing. But through that, at the end, a guy said, you know, you're a really hard worker. Do you want to work at Channel V and start editing all of the, you know, music clips and all that kind of stuff? And I was like, yeah, for sure. And then from that evolved into I went and worked on the World Surf Tour for like 6 months, and, you know, travelled around doing all that through, you know, being an editor at Channel V. And then from that I went on to produce the X Games in Australia for a couple of years, and then from that ran a small production company that did a thing called Chili Factor, which was another extreme sports show where I went to go out and film and, you know, edit all these different programs together for a couple of years.
I'm very conscious of your time because you said you have to go soon. We're running out of time.
No worries.
But I just want to, being that we are at a TAFE and it's an educational thing, one of the things I think that resonated with me, one of the things that you just said now, you 50 years old? Mm-hmm. Don't look a day over 25.
Thank you very much.
And you said like you'd only just started to figure out certain things about yourself and how to deal with stigmas and you know, dealing with the past experiences and whatnot. Possibly in the last 10 years. Up until that point, like, because I one of the things I deal with as well with people a lot of times, like they get to a certain age, say 30 for instance. I'm 37, 38 next month. And sometimes I'm talking to someone and they think that they're 30 years old and that's it, like that's who I am now. Like that's it, that's who I'm gonna be forever. And I'm not, like, I'm just, sometimes I feel like that myself, but I look at people and I see enough of it, like, because like by, you know, looking at it from the outside, you go, this guy has everything figured out. This
had
guy,
it sorted since he was 18. Yeah, that's what I thought.
No,
can you shed some light on that? Like that, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but can you tell me from your experience, like,
I did a lot of personal...
Should you have it figured out by 30?
No way. And, you know, essentially what I've always done in life to get to where I've got is just by taking things on. You know, luckily enough, I had my dad's hard work ethic. You know, he was worked on a building site. You know, he was always a hard worker, worked a lot of hours, always, you know, really good hard worker. And I got my work ethic from him. So I've never been afraid to take things on, you know, and if a door opens, just walk through it and see what's inside. You know, just take a chance, you know, because you've got to create your own luck. And for me, you know, the whole school thing and basically thinking, you know, I was, you know, silly, and that, you know, basically just stayed ticking away in the back of my mind. And then, you know, eventually it got to a point where, you know, I'd broken up with a girlfriend, and that'd been hard because we'd been through IVF and all that kind of stuff, and that stuff is really, you know, torturous to a relationship and, you know, to the people around you, because, you know, it's a really hard thing to deal with, you know, not having babies and all that kind of stuff. You know, my dad died at the same time. Just a whole bunch of things compounded. Work was really stressful, you know, so I felt like everything was just coming in on me. It's almost, you know, I've been through burnout a couple of times in my life as well, where I've just basically gone off and lived on an island for 3 months, you know, and basically got myself back together and then come back to the workforce, you know. So, you know, I've done personal growth at a few times, and I encourage everybody to do personal growth. And that is, you know, go out and talk to somebody about you and what you think your personality is, because you know, you're not always what you think you are because of that reason. There's a lot of things that, you know, we've all got our parents' traits. We've all, you know, got things that we do now because things have happened to us in our past and they've programmed us to be like this, you know. So if you've got some things about you that you're not quite sure of and you go, I don't know why I do this, go talk to someone, try and figure it out, because you can, you know, you can change yourself. You know, you just because you're like this, and, you know, you've got that little man inside your head talking to you like this and saying negative things to you, or, you know, whatever, you don't always have to have that internal dialogue. You can change that internal dialogue to be positive. You know, you can really turn your own self around, you know, but it takes a little bit of time and it takes effort. You know, I've done a lot of reading about, you know, confidence and what it takes to be confident and all those kind of things. And, you know, from a really early age, I've said to all my friends who have got kids and things like that, the one thing you want to do is, you know, not be a helicopter parent and tell your kids everything or what to do. Because the more you tell your kids what to do, the more they're going to not know what's going on. And the minute you are not there by their side, they can't figure stuff out. You know, you got to problem solving in any kind of situation, and being able to problem solve in any kind of situation is how you become confident. Knowing that doesn't matter what happens, you can problem solve your way out of that situation. That's what gives you confidence. You know, it comes from UFC, comes from fighting, comes from my work, you know, comes from just having to pay the bills and figure out things on the internet. You know, problem solving, if you can problem solve and do stuff, you'll gain a lot of confidence out of that, you know. And that's the one thing that, you know, I've taken out of all this is, you know, the little man inside my head that was just running a negative commentary for a long, long time. I managed to, you know, stop that and change that and turn it all around. And that's by essentially just being aware of it every single day, you know, and going, no, I'm not going to be that guy with that running in my head. I'm going to make sure that I turn that, you know, negative into a positive, you know, and every time he says something negative, I'm going to go, no, that's not right. Turn it into a positive. Because outwardly, you know, all my friends, when I was going through, you know, this, all my friends were like, I never knew that. You're always funny and outgoing and positive and having a good time. But I said, it's because I mastered, you know, like a lot of people do. A lot of people who are going through a hard time and going through depression and stuff like that, a lot of, you know, athletes go through it when they finish. You know, I see it all the time with athletes and actors and things like that. All of a sudden their world changes and they don't know how to deal with stuff, because all of a sudden they were up here and now they're back down there. And how do they deal with that? Oh no, my world's falling apart. They don't have the mental tools to deal with that changing of the situation. You know, and that's, again, it's just figuring things out. It's being real, you know, staying real, not living in a fantasy land, you know, and making sure that you do everything, you know, that you can do to be a good, positive, you know, happy person. You know, that's all anybody really wants to be. Doesn't matter how much money they got, doesn't matter how many toys they got, whatever. You just want to be a good, happy, positive person, then life will be good.
Eli?
No, I can totally agree. 100%.
I know we are now right on your time
Okay.
frame here. Darren, I just want to thank you very much for coming out.
Yeah, no
Obviously, anyone that's watching can realise how busy you are as a person. And for you to come out all the way, because you don't live anywhere near here, to drive out to Campbelltown, really, really appreciate your
No
time.
worries, yeah.
It was really amazing. So thank
All
you
good.
very much.
No worries, buddy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot.